What's going on, my fellow Tarkov enthusiasts, Doc Average Gamer guys? We are back, and we're going to be jumping in this video and chatting a little bit about and basically giving you a full rundown on the Tarkov TV podcast we had. In addition to that, as you probably noticed, or maybe you haven't, there is a new patch out. Really not a whole lot to cover, but we'll spend a little bit of time right up front talking about what the patch notes entailed and what we got inside of today's patch. So sit back, relax, let's jump into some news. All right, so first things first, let's just talk about the patch. The patch was essentially bug fixes, optimizations, and just a whole bunch of stuff related to that. Really no additional content. There was some background changes that we saw specific to things on the flea market. Probably most notably, BT ammo got banned. There was a few additional weapons that got banned from the flea market, SR25 being one of them, which is kind of hurts my soul a little bit. And when I say BT, I'm talking about 545 by 39. BT got banned from the flea market. Lucky Scav junk boxes and thick weapons cases also got banned from the flea market, which I think is that's an interesting one. The Lucky Scav junk box I don't think is a huge issue for a lot of folks because, again, Therapist sells those, and she was always the cheapest on the market if you wanted to buy one. But the thick weapons case is actually really interesting for me. It feels like kind of a money control issue, but at the same time, limiting the options for getting space expansion seems a little weird. So I'm not really sure what the intent of that. There's a few additional weapons that were banned, but those are probably some of the most impactful things. But again, as far as the actual patch is concerned, not a whole lot there. Like I said, a whole ton of bug fixes, things like stuff that's actually been kind of haunting the game for a little while. The ability to like stand up where you couldn't, get inside vehicles and shoreline. The whole, if you've been kind of staying up to date with what's going on in the community for some of it, there's like some movement glitches where you could jump, dive, roll, flip over, lay on your back, and then stand up really quickly again, which made it almost impossible to hit. That's all been fixed. And then a whole list of other things. They also adjusted some sounds for movement on plastic. I only noticed this up in the director's office, actually. Was kind of an interesting place. I noticed some different sounds in there. And then again, a few other things. They also did bring MIP streaming back. They talked a little bit about that, so there's a few things in the patch notes. If you're interested in checking those out, if I remember, I will put those the link to the patch notes down below, so you can go ahead and read through that. Like I said, just a ton of fixes. This was very much just an optimization patch, which is great. We needed one. We needed some stuff to get fixed. Like to see this. I think anybody should be happy if they're playing the game that we got some adjustments there. And I've played some raids today. Everything feels fine. So it feels like most of what they did was working. Jumping into the next portion of it, we have a lot to go through when it comes to the Tarkov TV podcast. So they did just pretty close to 2 hours today. They showed off a whole bunch of stuff, not a whole bunch. They showed off a few additional things, mostly related to weapons. I'm going to pop up some screenshots as they rolled through of some new streets that we're looking at. So as I do that, I'm just going to rapid fire the main things that I heard out of today's Tarkov TV podcast. Once I get through that, I'll share a few thoughts on a couple of them, and we'll jump into it. So I'm going to roll the footage for the new streets. So these are all new screenshots for streets. This is looking really cool. And that's where a lot of it focused today. So they said talking about the next big patch, or I think this is probably a couple of big patches. The real main goal right now is the first portion of streets. They're still planning that for the year end or before year end, which is coming pretty quick. I don't know how else to say that. They are still looking at this being a 30 to 40 PMC map. The biggest issue they are having, or one of the big issues that they're having right now, according to Nikita, is obviously making it optimized to run at 60 frames per second with some like standard across the board kind of settings. And yeah, but we should see, if they stay on plan, we should see the first iteration, which will just be a portion of streets by the end of the year. And he said to not anticipate, he kind of danced around it, but it sounded like he said not to anticipate that being 30 or 40 PMCs. One of the reasons it's so big and they're going to put so many people in it, and they talked a lot about having multiple bosses, which we've heard from before, in addition to having a lot of AI scavs, is that a lot of the buildings are fully explorable. So at one of the screens, they showed off a movie theater. He said that's going to be fully explorable. Showed off a few other buildings. These are going to be fully explorable. So it's looking really good, but obviously that is a lot of ground. And he said this is obviously, he said in the past, biggest map. So that's pretty cool. They're working on Lightkeeper, fully in-game trader. They said this is very important for the storyline, so they want to get the mechanics right. They want to get this all right. They said they're not going to share anything about this. We're going to have to all go into the raids and experience it, but that is another very high priority in the list that we should see before the end of the year. And again, this feels like multiple iterations of big patches, which is pretty cool. They talked a little bit about this at the beginning and then a little bit more at the end of the podcast, but they are replacing Steam audio. So they are completely going to be redoing the audio with a different system. They didn't say what it was, but they're going a different direction. Steam audio was not the play, and they're going to be reworking it. And they hope that that certainly fixes a lot of the bugs and everything else that they got going on. Skills rework is coming. They said that's one big thing that they're looking at, doing an overhaul of the skills. It sounds like some quest things as well are going to be coming with that, but a skill rework is in the works as it relates to, again, it sounds like they understand the implication with the traders, the progression, and some of those things. So that's pretty cool. They said they're doing a lot of work on movement. They specifically talked additional movement, like I'll call it techniques, but vaulting and things like that. I don't think that's something that we'll see this year. They're working a ton on the animations, but specifically talked about that should hopefully come before year end is how you look and movement on angled surfaces. So properly standing and doing those kinds of things should be pretty interesting. Storyline quest. They mentioned this really quick. This is extremely important to Nikita. This is one of the biggest details that he's working on, but we're not going to hear anything about it, and it's going to be on release only, so there will be no testing of these, and that's essentially what it's going to be. I'm pretty excited for that, but I think that's kind of really talking about the whole overhaul of quests and everything else, and then specifically the storyline, so that's pretty cool. They talked about adding a belt-fed machine gun. There's some other guns that we're going to go through here. Talked about new hideout upgrades. Our areas... that should be coming relatively soon, so kind of an additions to the hideout and maybe a refab of some of the hideout. Talked about having a gym where you could level strength, so that one's pretty interesting. A new grouping, matching, and friends system. This is going to be used in Arena, which is still on its way, and that's why they're working on it now, so that should be pretty cool. They've talked about this in the past, but basically your ability to group up with your friends, get everybody into, like, quote unquote the lobby, but not be in the lobby, just matchmake in together, and then when everybody's ready you can queue in together, so that should be pretty cool. FSR 2.0, they wanted to show that but they couldn't. Tons of optimizations. This is a later on in the year, or later probably next year, armor and hitboxes, some modular armor. They've talked about this before, but it sounds like there's a lot of work to do with this before it's going to head on its way, and sounds like it's not necessarily low on the priority list, but it felt like it was a little way off, just how they described it. I'm going to show you a clip. I'm going to show you a couple of additional clips, but there is a clip of a % chance for weapon and armor kits to give your weapon and armor buffs. Nikita specifically said this is an RPG element. It's going to relate to the skill of your weapon repair and armor repair. So I guess there will be a skill aligned to that. And you can see from the clip that it has a % chance to like reduce recoil on your weapons. It has a % chance to reduce damage on your armors. Pretty interesting, pretty dang interesting. So that's pretty cool. They talked really quickly about arenas. There's going to be 4 arenas at the start. He mentioned that a couple of the screens that they shared earlier had a few things in that, so that's cool. There is going to be a spectator mode. It's going to be basically like kind of like a head cam type thing where you're going to be able to capture that both in arena and in the main game and capture footage. So we'll see. That's going to be an interesting one. They talked a lot about unconscious states. This again feels like something that we won't see for a while now, because it has a ton of different areas that has to go into, not only modeling, from the character, but also synchronization and all that stuff. But basically where you can get knocked either down, your PMC, like you get shot in the leg, you fall over, or if you take critical damage, you can actually get knocked out. But then that is going to allow for partner healing. So if you're running in a duo, your partner can run up, hit you with an adrenaline stim, get you woken back up so you can get back in the fight. All that sounds really cool. It's going to definitely add a different dynamic to the game, but that is something they were working on, and sounds like working on quite a bit. Again, more for weapons, I'll show that here at the end. Seasonal textures, they just mentioned this, things like autumn and snow and all that stuff, that's going to be coming in the DLC. That I personally am really excited for. That'll be really, really cool. And then one thing that they said that I think people have been asking for a long time, but he said very heavy quests to allow for portions of clothing of the bosses to be unlocked. So very much like we see the Kill It quests, I think in the near future or whenever, we'll be able to have some quests where you do some pretty extreme things and be able to rock some boss clothing, and that would be pretty cool. I won't lie, that'd be pretty cool. And then there was a whole bunch of just kind of Q&A at the end. One of the big things I took out of it was basically that, people were asking for a whole bunch of different guns. He said they're working on tons of different guns being in there, whole bunch of variations of the AK, a lot of the modern weapon systems they're certainly working on. I mentioned the belt-fed machine gun earlier. That stuff is on its way. They fully intend to do that. However, the weapons that they put in have to fit the lore of the conflict of the region for the time. So a lot of people were talking about like bows and crossbows, old weapons like the M1 Garand. He said that stuff would be cool basically, but it's not a fit. It's not a fit for the lore and the conflict that they're trying to build, which makes sense, right? We certainly have seen some weapons that you could argue are kind of like a little bit more outdated. However, it's trying to fit kind of the culture and the area and what you would find out there. So that's essentially it. So before we jump into weapons, that's like a very quick deep dive as best I could, as quick as I could go. A few things I'm really excited for. One, optimizations and bug fixes needs to happen. I certainly want Streets. My biggest fear with Streets is it's going to release and just not be playable. It's just not going to be fun. It's going to be too buggy. There's going to be too much stuff. I'm certainly excited for it, but I want it when it's ready, and I want a playable version, even if it's a portion, when it's ready to go. I am really excited for a few of these things. I'm excited for a hideout refresh. I'm excited for a skills rework. I think we've seen from this patch specifically in the video I just did the other day that just went up about running meta gear and being overweight. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done on how to best balance how you level those things up and how you progress. That needs to be a priority in my opinion. In addition to that, I would absolutely love a quest system rework. We saw some of it this wipe, which is good. I've enjoyed how they've handled bosses. If you're not familiar, bosses are not kind of stacked behind each other like they used to be. Now, you do certain other quests, you progress far enough essentially in like that maps, quote unquote maps storyline, and you get your quest to open up Jaeger, and you can essentially have pretty much just about every boss open at the same time. That's really cool. There are lots of quests that should do similar things, because what I think it would allow people to do is have a little bit more freedom and flexibility to play the game and move around the different maps when they want to. I personally would love to start to go to Shoreline early, especially if I could get some money, get to level 15, start buying some keys. I would spend a ton of time on Shoreline with some comfort to make money and also be able to knock out quests. The problem is a lot of those quests take some time to open up. So the quest rework, especially even from a rewards perspective, would be really nice, and I'm hoping that they're moving towards that as well. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm super excited for Arena. I think it's going to be great. Lightkeeper, I think, is going to be really, really cool. I think Lighthouse is going to stay as one of the primary maps for a while, just with the expansion now, the additional bosses, and then when we get an in-game trader, I think that map is going to be absolutely insane. So that's really cool. I would like to see some continued optimization for maybe a few of the other maps. There's a lot of discussion in the comments about things like interchange and having some, reworks done on that and a few other things. I think there could be some additional balancing on each of the maps. But for the most part, I'm hopeful that, at least we're getting some. And some movement stuff is cool. Yeah, there's a lot here. It was a big one. It was a good Tarkov TV podcast. I think they talked about a lot. So let's really quickly, I'm going to jump into a bunch of clips of what we got to see. So first off, probably showing off the clip of the AUG. This is on its way. This looks really neat. Nikita spent some time talking about he's really liking kind of where the animation department is going, what they're doing with some more dynamic animations with the weapons and magazines and things like that. I don't see necessarily a ton of it with the AUG, but a clip later you're going to see I think is pretty neat. So we get the AUG clip. This looks pretty cool. I'm just really curious what kind of customization we're going to be able to get. That's one thing I'm not really too sure about. I don't know the weapon platform myself very much, so I'm curious to see what we can do. I'm hoping it comes with a decent variety like we got with the G36, but I don't know if the platform supports it. So if you're watching this and you know more about the AUG, let me know down in the comments, because I would be curious, because they do definitely keep it more to real life, if you will. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to show really quickly the clip for the percent chance for weapon and armor buffs. If I didn't show it, or I might have showed it twice already, but I'm gonna show it again so you can see the skills and how they change. That I think is going to be really big, and it's going to make those weapon and armor repair kits extremely valuable for the ability to do that. And it seems like there's a common and at least a rare tier of the buffs, which is neat, and it looks like they do the same things but at better percentages. So that was pretty cool. I'll show off a clip here of the new Glock animations. So this looks pretty good. Not the biggest Glock user in the game, but if you are, that's pretty neat. Looks like they're going to continue to refine some of that stuff and make it look better as we go. And then probably the clip I'm most excited for, which I thought was really cool, is the CP2M, which is basically like a Russian MP7. This looks awesome. This is where I think you see kind of some of the changes with a little bit more of the dynamic animations, especially like the quick mag release, like the flick that you got. You'll see it in the clip if you pay attention. It is really cool. I really like that. I think that's neat. I think that little stylistic kind of stuff, it can just, I hope it doesn't take a long time, because I would rather have a better working game and good content than that. But if that doesn't take a long time as they're adding in these new guns, I think it makes a whole lot of sense to do some neat stuff like that. So that's what I have for this video. So I didn't want to keep it any longer than it needed to. Typically I like to rant and ramble. I talked about what I'm excited for. Let me know down below what you're excited for. If you saw something you really liked, again, big patch, no content, but a ton of bug fixes. Let me know over the next couple of days as you're playing the game if you're running into some of the same issues. Let me know if it feels a little bit better. Again, I've only had a few raids today, so I can't really tell, but I'm hopeful that we continue to see these optimizations and bug fixes, and that part will be pretty cool. More hardcore, more escape series, whole bunch of other stuff going on. I'm going to close this out by just saying thanks. Appreciate all the support on YouTube. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you enjoy kind of the news, if you will. In addition, I'm going to flash some socials: Twitter, Twitch, Discord, TikTok. Links in the description. We'll be live this weekend, so come check us out. We usually stream Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in the later Eastern Standard Time, like 8 to 9-ish. We get started, and we usually go for at least a few hours. So I'm working my way through my quests and doing actually pretty good. Had a good couple of days here, so if you need some help running some quests, need some keys or whatever, stop by. We might be able to help you out as we push our way towards Kappa. But with all that being said, close it out for today. I am Doc, Average Gamer Guys. As always, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next Escape from Tarkov video. Peace.